force you referred to.
All right, I've finished, thank you.
Okay.
And I'm not aware of this scope analysis either.
Elaine Saxby.
Thank you. Good morning. As I think you've already touched on, the rise in energy prices obviously actually affects everyone and every business in the country, but the impact of it is clearly greater on those people of a lower income and where it's a higher proportion of their monthly expenditure. And so there has been a suggestion from some commentators that perhaps we could have helped people through the benefit system rather than the decisions that the Treasury have taken. And I just wondered what your views on that were and that as an option.
I think, the Chancellor and Bayes worked together on this. My assumption is that I shouldn't make assumptions. So my expectation is they would want to go further than people necessarily just receiving universal credit or other benefits, recognising the scale of the challenge that households face. So they've taken an approach that's somewhat even more universal than universal credit.
And I think there'll be many people who are very grateful for that extra support. But I think some of the evidence we've had this morning has been quite disturbing about those people really at the bottom rung of the universal credit system. And I guess it's really whether, for those people moving forward, is there an acknowledgement we might need to do more moving forward, and might the benefit system be used at that point in time?
Well, one of the things that I've shared is that my understanding is the scheme on warm home discounts will be expanded to there'll be more people eligible, and once that policy is formalised, what we have been able to do successfully is to, instead of people having to apply for it, I think it's nearly 1 million pensioners, for example, who that's just automated now, and we can share that information with the energy suppliers. I think I'm right in saying we've offered to do the same, but we need to get the full details of that, and that will happen in due course. So make it much more accessible, I think is the best way I can put it across to you, instead of people waiting to apply.
And looking sort of forward through the year where we are, although obviously everyone is hopeful that longer term energy prices will revert to former levels, this year we are expecting further rises in the energy price cap. Is there a strategy or plans in place to review whether further support is needed in this area?
Well, that's a matter for Bayes and the Treasury.
Okay, thank you. And so linked to fuel, in my constituency, we had data come through to show that actually fuel costs for my constituents had really jumped. So we went back and double checked, was that fuel as in household fuel or as in fuel as in transport fuel? And actually was quite surprised to find in a very rural constituency like mine that it's actually the transport costs that have shot up exponentially for people with the change in the price of fuel. And I just wondered, is there any work to understand how this is impacting on people being able to get into work, or anything that is being looked at for people in their rural constituencies who don't have access to public transport, who are actually seeing just the cost of being able to work rise exponentially?
So I think, as was pointed out in the Levelling Up white paper, it's about 70% of people looking for work don't have regular access to cars or other forms of transport, and the DfT's response is about the bus strategy, some of the powers coming through, the different aspects of funding, but I'm conscious about that. It's why, as part of the transport were included as part of the interministerial group in those discussions, but that seemed to be their main response to it. But you'll need to speak to transport on that.
Okay, so this next part of the question, again, apologies if it's not you and it's within another department.
I'm sure everybody will ask me all sorts of questions which I don't have the answer to. You'll have to go to the department that does.
But are there any plans within the department, so as you're aware, as I've mentioned here before, because I can speak with more detail on my own constituency data, that we have a very high number of job vacancies at this time, and we have more people out of work than we had pre-pandemic. Yet we don't have many buses. We have one route that covers one section of my constituency, and that's about it. So are there plans to try and find solutions or things that are already in place that people may be unaware of to help those people in rural locations get to work?
Sure. Well, there's an element of, I think, a number of different job centres facilitate or signpost towards something called Wheels to Work, things like where people get support to get a moped or something like that. In other parts of the country, in hospitality, there are some employers coming forward and, frankly, putting on buses, either for their own workforce, and I think I've heard of one now where there's almost a collective element of hospitality. I can't quite recall what that is. One of them is definitely in Cumbria, where they're trying to group together to provide transport for people. because if people can't get to work, they won't be able to fill those vacancies. So they're trying to be creative themselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Secretary of State, can I just take you back to your answer to Debbie Abraham?